Hi, everyone. Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. The world she knew crumbled in a symphony of howls and screams. Wren, a human living among shifters, watched her pack fall, her freedom extinguished with their last breaths. She became a captive, a stark reminder of defeat, owned by the very alpha who had orchestrated her people's demise. Yet, even in chains, an untamed fire smoldered within her. A wrenching agony, raw and sudden, ripped through her veins, blurring the lines between bone and muscle, skin and fur. When the blinding pain subsided, the world shifted, and so did she. No longer merely human, she stood transformed, a creature of raw power. The alpha who had once claimed her as property now spoke a single potent word, mate. But his word would not define her. She would not be his queen. She would claim her own crown. The aftermath of fire and blood, the acrid scent of burning timber mixed with the coppery tang of blood, clinging to Wren's nostrils as she was roughly dragged through the wreckage of what was once her home. The autumn forest, usually a sanctuary of whispering leaves and dappled sunlight, was now a gruesome tableau of defeat. The remnants of the Crimson Moon Pack, her people, lay still and broken, their forms irrevocably human in death, a stark contrast to the triumphant, hulking figures of the Blackwood warriors who prowled among them. Wren, a human woman of 20 cycles, felt the bite of the thick rope chafing her wrists, binding them tightly behind her back. Her head throbbed, a dull ache mirroring the hollowness in her chest. She had grown up among the Crimson Moon shifters, accepted and cherished, their human members valued for their ingenuity and different perspectives. She had trained alongside them, learned their pack customs, their hunting strategies, even their language of howls and growls. Now, all that meant nothing. She was merely a prize, a chattel, stripped of dignity and future. A deep guttural growl vibrated through the ground, announcing the approach of Roric, the alpha of the Blackwood Pack. He moved with a predatory grace, his massive frame rippling with power, his fur a seamless cloak of deepest night. His eyes, twin pools of molten gold, surveyed the destruction, a chilling satisfaction hardening his features. When his gaze, sharp and assessing, landed on Wren, a slow, contemptuous sneer stretched his lupine features. "A human," Rooric rumbled, his voice a low, gravelly sound that seemed to mock her very existence. "Weak, easily broken." Wren met his gaze, her chin lifting instinctively, a fragile defiance flickering in her amber eyes. Fear, cold and insidious, coiled in her gut, but she refused to cower, to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. A hulking Blackwood warrior, his fur matted with dried blood and dust, tightened his grip on the rope binding her. "What are your orders, Alpha?" he asked, his tone laced with a dismissive brutality. Roric's golden eyes narrowed, studying Wren with an unsettling intensity. It was an appraisal, cold and calculating, stripping her of any personal identity, reducing her to an object. "She will serve," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute, unquestioned authority. A stark reminder of the Crimson Moon's foolishness. Let her witness the strength of the Blackwood Pack and regret her allegiances. The warrior grunted, shoving Wren forward. She stumbled, catching herself awkwardly, her bound hands making it impossible to regain her balance with grace. Each jarring step sent fresh waves of humiliation through her. Tears, hot and bitter, pricked at her eyes, not from the physical discomfort, but from the crushing weight of her new, bleak reality. A slave, a human slave, in a world where brute strength and the ability to shift into a predatory beast dictated one's worth. The journey to the Blackwood territory was a grueling forced march. Wren's feet, clad in worn leather boots, a poor match for the rough terrain, ached with every step. Her body screamed for rest, for water, for an end to the ceaseless movement. Blackwood warriors, silent and imposing in their wolf forms, flanked the small group of human captives, their golden eyes vigilant, their senses alert to any sign of escape or defiance. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper into the Blackwood lands, the trees taller, denser, casting long, oppressive shadows. The scent of pine and damp earth began to mix with the pervasive, unsettling odor of the Blackwood Pack, a musky, territorial scent that spoke of ancient power and unyielding dominance. The days blurred into a monotonous cycle of exhaustion and despair. Wren ate what she was given, slept when she was allowed, and moved when commanded. Her spirit, though bruised, refused to shatter. She observed her captors, her human keenness for detail absorbing every nuance of their behavior, their hierarchy, their strengths, and their subtle vulnerabilities. She learned the names of the more prominent warriors, the way they interacted with each other, the unspoken codes of their pack. She was a slave, yes, but she was also a keen observer, gathering intelligence with every silent breath she took. Her mind, her one remaining weapon, remained sharp, a defiant spark in the encroaching darkness. Her days were spent in the Blackwood camp, a sprawling encampment nestled deep within a colossal forest, surrounded by ancient, towering pines. It was a place of raw power and stark efficiency. The scent of dozens, perhaps hundreds, of wolves permeated the air, a rich, earthy smell, laced with pine and something wild, something untamed. Her tasks were menial and endless, hauling water from a nearby stream, cleaning pelts, preparing food for the warriors, tending to the fires. Her hands, once soft, grew calloused and rough, her muscles aching with unfamiliar exertion. The Blackwood Pack was organized with ruthless precision. Alpha Rooric ruled with an iron paw, his every command met with unquestioning obedience. His beta, a lean, scarred male named Valerius, enforced his will with quiet, brutal efficiency. The pack was built on strength, discipline, and an unwavering loyalty to their alpha. There was little room for sentiment, less for weakness. Wren often caught the eyes of the other human captives, a shared glance of misery and resignation passing between them. They were a disparate group, remnants of smaller packs conquered by the Blackwood, their spirits broken by servitude. Wren, however, felt a different kind of fire in her gut. Not just despair, but a growing ember of resentment, a silent vow that this would not be her end. She might be a slave now, but she refused to be just a slave. One frigid morning, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in muted grays and purples, Wren was sent to fetch water from the icy stream that snaked through the forest. The air was sharp, biting at her exposed skin, and her breath plumed in frosty clouds. She shivered, her threadbare tunic offering little protection against the cold. As she filled the heavy buckets, her numb fingers fumbling with the handles, a sudden, blinding pain lanced through her entire being. It started in her bones, a deep, excruciating ache that felt like fire tearing through marrow. Her muscles spasmed, tightening, then tearing with agonizing force. A gasp tore from her throat, but it was quickly swallowed by a raw, guttural growl, a sound that was utterly alien yet intensely familiar. Her vision blurred, the world dissolving into a kaleidoscope of searing white and throbbing black. She fell to her knees, the buckets clattering, spilling water over the frozen ground. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the pain. This wasn't normal. This wasn't human. Her skin felt too tight, stretching, splitting. A terrifying heat spread through her veins, a primal current that overwhelmed her senses. Her teeth elongated, sharpened, a sickening crunch echoing in her ears. A roar, involuntary and primal, tore from her throat, a sound of agony and something else, something wild and ancient. She felt her body contorting, twisting, expanding, a violent metamorphosis she had only ever witnessed, never experienced. She was shifting, unexpectedly, violently. And in that moment, as her human form disintegrated into something terrifyingly new, Wren realized that her life as a powerless human slave was over. A new, terrifying chapter had just begun, one where the rules of her world had just been irrevocably rewritten. And the implications, she knew, would shake the very foundations of the Blackwood Pack. A new form, a new fear the world solidified around Wren. No longer a swirling vortex of agony, but a tangible, sharp reality. The searing pain, though still a dull throb beneath her new skin, had morphed into a strange, exhilarating power. She lay on the cold, damp earth, her limbs heavy, unfamiliar, yet strangely perfect. The scent of pine and damp earth was overwhelming, every individual needle, every decaying leaf distinct and vibrant. Sounds, too, were amplified, the distant scurry of a squirrel, the gentle murmur of the stream, all sharp and clear. She tried to move, and her new body responded with an alien grace. She pushed herself up, her muscles rippling under a thick coat of dark fur, the color of wet earth. Her paws, large and powerful, felt strange, yet utterly natural. A low growl rumbled in her chest, an involuntary sound that sent a shiver of fear, then a thrill of power, through her. She was a wolf. A massive wolf, larger than any she had ever seen in her former pack, even the males. Her senses, once merely human, were now hyper-tuned to the world around her. She could feel the subtle vibrations of the earth, track the slightest scent of fear or excitement, hear the distant flutter of a bird's wings. The immediate aftermath of her involuntary shift was a chaotic blur. The scent of her transformation, a potent mix of fear, raw power, and an unknown essence, ripped through the calm of the Blackwood camp. Shouts erupted, followed by the rapid thud of paws on soft earth. Wren, still disoriented, instinctively crouched, her hackles rising, a primal instinct for self-preservation taking over. Blackwood warriors, drawn by the undeniable scent of a rogue shifter, burst through the trees, their eyes wide with disbelief and suspicion. They were a mix of full wolf forms and partial shifts, their faces a mask of confusion. They had been told there were no shifters left from the Crimson Moon, only humans. And yet, here she was, a powerful, dark-furred wolf, radiating an unknown aura. "What is that?" one warrior growled, his voice laced with fear. Another, older and more cautious, began to circle Wren, his hackles slightly raised. It's the human slave. But how?" Wren didn't understand their words, but she understood their fear, their confusion, and the immediate threat. She snarled, a deep, warning sound, her powerful jaws snapping shut. She was cornered, outnumbered, but a ferocious protectiveness surged through her, an instinct she hadn't known she possessed. Suddenly, a deeper, more resonant growl cut through the chaos, silencing the other warriors instantly. The air crackled with a palpable tension, a ripple of deference spreading through the Blackwood ranks. Alpha Rooric emerged from the trees, his wolf form immense and intimidating, his golden eyes blazing with a mixture of shock and dawning recognition. He stopped, several paces from Wren, his golden eyes sweeping over her new form. A flicker of disbelief giving way to a calculated assessment. His gaze lingered on her eyes, which, even in her wolf form, retained a spark of human intelligence and a hint of their original amber hue. Then, a low rumbling growl, softer than his usual commands, vibrated from his chest. Wren braced herself for an attack, for the inevitable punishment for her unexpected transformation. But Rooric did not attack. He simply stood there, his gaze fixed on her, an unreadable expression on his powerful wolf face. Then, he shifted. The transformation was swift, fluid, a testament to his immense control and power. In a blink, his massive wolf form dissolved into a tall, imposing man, his muscles rippling under taut skin, his dark hair falling over his shoulders. His golden eyes, now human but still piercing, remained locked on hers. He took a step closer, slowly, cautiously, as if approaching a skittish wild creature. He knelt, extending a hand, not in aggression, but in a strange, hesitant gesture. His voice, when he spoke, was low, a rumble that resonated with an unfamiliar warmth, tinged with a raw, undeniable possessiveness. "Mine," he whispered, the single word laced with profound meaning. "Mate." Wren's wolf ears twitched, her new senses processing the word. Mate. The concept, deeply ingrained in shifter lore, was alien to her human understanding. Yet a primal part of her new wolf nature recognized its profound implication. It was a claim, a bond, an undeniable connection that transcended species and circumstance. But her human mind, the one that had just been a slave, rebelled. Mate? This beast, this alpha who had conquered her pack, enslaved her, now claimed her as his own. A surge of defiant rage, cold and fierce, extinguished the fleeting awe of her transformation. She snarled, a clear, guttural sound of rejection, her hackles rising. Rooric recoiled slightly, a flicker of surprise, then something akin to wounded pride, crossing his features. The other Blackwood warriors, who had watched the unfolding scene in stunned silence, began to shift nervously, sensing the shift in their alpha's demeanor. A rogue? One warrior dared to whisper, "She rejects the alpha's claim?" Rooric ignored them. His gaze hardened, losing some of its initial awe, replaced by a steely determination. He stood, his imposing height looming over her. "You are mine, little wolf," he growled, his voice regaining its previous dominance. Whether you recognize it or not, Wren knew, with a certainty that thrummed through her new wolf blood, that her unexpected shift had thrown a massive wrench into the alpha's plans. She was no longer a powerless human slave. She was a shifter, a rare, perhaps unique case of a human born into a shifter pack, unexpectedly manifesting the ability to shift. And she was, inexplicably, his mate. But her heart, still scarred by the loss of her pack and the humiliation of servitude, refused to accept his claim. She was not here to be his mate, to be ruled beside him. She was here, she realized with a chilling clarity, to take the crown for herself. Her transformation was not just an escape from slavery. It was the unexpected beginning of her war for vengeance, and for the very crown that now rested on Roric's arrogant head. The first battle had been lost, but the true war, the one for her destiny, had just begun. The Alpha's claim and the prisoner's resolve, the declaration of mate, had sent shockwaves not only through Wren, but through the entire Blackwood Pack. The raw, primal scent of a new, unknown shifter, coupled with the Alpha's undeniable claim, left the warriors reeling in confusion and awe. Wren, in her powerful wolf form, remained defiant, a low growl rumbling in her chest, her amber eyes, still carrying the fire of her human spirit, locked on Rooric. Rooric, having regained his composure, did not press his claim further in that immediate moment. He simply stood, radiating an aura of possessive authority that was both intimidating and strangely compelling. The other Blackwood warriors, still in their wolf forms, remained at a respectful distance, their confused glances flitting between their alpha and the newly shifted female. "Shift back," Rooric commanded, his voice a low, firm growl. Wren understood. The words resonated not just through her ears, but through her very being, an instinctive recognition of an alpha's command. But her human mind, stubborn and rebellious, fought against it. She didn't want to obey him. She didn't want to acknowledge his authority, especially not now that she had found a power of her own. Yet, an unfamiliar pull, a deeper, instinctual urge, tugged at her, demanding compliance. She resisted, her new muscles tensing, her wolf form trembling with the effort. A frustrated snarl tore from her throat. She didn't know how to shift back. The transformation had been violent, uncontrolled, driven by an unknown trigger. She was a wolf now, and she felt utterly trapped in this new skin, yet, paradoxically, more free than she had ever been as a human slave. Roric's golden eyes narrowed, a flicker of impatience crossing his features. He took another step towards her, radiating an undeniable power that seemed to press down on her, demanding submission. "Shift, little one. You cannot remain in this form." The pressure was immense. Wren felt her wolf form falter, her muscles twitching involuntarily. Her bones seemed to protest, a faint echo of the pain from her initial shift. She wanted to defy him, but the primal instinct to obey an alpha, even a hostile one, was a potent force within her new being. More importantly, the sheer confusion of how to revert to her human self was overwhelming. Suddenly, a searing pain, different from the shift, lanced through her. It was a sharp, focused agony in her head, as if a sharp claw was raking through her mind. She whimpered, her powerful wolf body trembling. It was Rooric reaching out with his alpha command, forcing her. She collapsed, her wolf form dissolving in a shimmering haze of agony and bright light. When her vision cleared, she was human again, naked and vulnerable, lying on the cold, damp earth. Her body ached, her head pounded, and a chilling vulnerability washed over her. The raw power of the wolf was gone, replaced by the frailties of her human form. Rooric stood over her, his expression unreadable, a single cloak appearing in his hand as he dropped it over her shivering form. He didn't offer comfort or even a word of tenderness, just a cold, analytical gaze. "You are a shifter," he stated, his voice a low rumble. "A rare, unexpected one. Your scent is unique, unlike any I have ever encountered." Wren scrambled to pull the cloak around her, her eyes blazing with fury and humiliation. "I am your prisoner, not your mate," she spat, her voice hoarse from the strain of her shift. "And I will never be yours." Roric's lips curved into a faint predatory smile. "A spirited one. Good. It will make the bond stronger." He gestured to the surrounding warriors. Take her to the Alpha's personal quarters. She is no longer a slave. She is my guest. Under guard, of course." The words Alpha's personal quarters sent a fresh wave of dread through Wren. It was a claim, a public declaration of his intent. She was not to be thrown into the common slave barracks. She was to be kept close, under his direct control. A symbolic prize and a perplexing mystery he intended to unravel. Two warriors, less rough than the ones who had captured her, approached cautiously, their wolf forms radiating a respectful caution. They did not touch her, but gestured for her to follow. Wren, seeing no immediate pack to escape, swallowed her anger and pushed herself to her feet, wrapping the cloak tightly around her. The Alpha's quarters were not a grand palace, but a large, well-built lodge, constructed from dark, sturdy timber, nestled deeper within the Blackwood territory. Inside, it was surprisingly austere, furnished simply with rough-hewn furniture, thick furs, and a large, crackling stone fireplace. Wren was led to a smaller room adjacent to Roric's own chambers, a room that was stark but clean. There was a simple cot with furs, a small wooden table, and a wash basin. A single, small window, barred and unyielding, looked out onto the dense forest. A female warrior, older and with a stern but not unkind face, was assigned as her primary guard. Her name was Lyra, and she moved with a quiet efficiency. She brought Wren fresh clothes, simple sturdy tunics and trousers, and hot water for washing. She watched Wren with a silent, assessing gaze, her golden eyes betraying no emotion. Wren found herself in a strange limbo. She was no longer performing menial tasks, no longer subjected to the overt cruelty of the lowest-ranking slaves. But she was still a prisoner, watched constantly, her movements restricted. She was an object of intense interest, a mystery the Blackwood Pack, and especially their Alpha, seemed determined to solve. Rooric visited her frequently, often at odd hours. He would enter her room without preamble, his imposing presence filling the small space. He didn't threaten her, didn't try to force himself on her. Instead, he observed her, his golden eyes scrutinizing her every move, every expression. He would ask questions, probing, analytical, about her life with the Crimson Moon Pack, about her human family, about any unusual experiences that might explain her shift. "There was nothing," Wren would insist, her voice calm, despite the fear that still lurked beneath her defiance. "I am human. I was born human. I lived as human. There was nothing." Rooric would merely hum, a low, thoughtful sound in his chest. "Yet you shifted. A powerful shift, for one who was supposedly human. Your wolf, it is unlike anything I have encountered. Stronger, purer." He spoke of her wolf as if it were a separate entity, a creature to be analyzed and understood. Wren felt a strange disconnect. Her wolf, this new, powerful part of her, was still a mystery even to herself. She didn't know how she had shifted, didn't know how to control it, didn't understand the power that now surged through her veins. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty: she would not be his. The word Métis grated on her ears, a bitter mockery of her loss and her captivity. In the quiet solitude of her guarded room, Wren began to plot. She might be a prisoner, but her mind was free. She observed Lyra, noting her routines, her occasional moments of distraction. She listened to the sounds of the Blackwood camp, mapping out its layout in her mind, identifying potential escape routes, weaknesses in their security. Her newfound strength, the raw power of her wolf form, pulsed beneath her skin, a promise of freedom, a tool for vengeance. She was still vulnerable, still an unknown quantity even to herself. But the fire of defiance that had flickered in her human spirit now burned with the fierce intensity of a newly ignited wolf's rage. She was not here to accept Roric's claim. She was here to understand her new power, to control it, and to use it to reclaim her freedom, exact her revenge, and perhaps take a crown for herself. The Alpha might call her mate, but she would prove to him and to all the Blackwood Pack that she was no one's possession. She was a queen in the making, even if she had to claw her way to the throne. The unveiling of an anomaly days bled into weeks within the confines of Roric's lodge. Wren's captivity settled into a strained routine, a peculiar existence where she was treated more as a scientific anomaly than a prisoner of war, yet still undeniably confined. She ate the meals provided, simple but nourishing, watched Lyra, her silent guard, and observed Rooric, his visits becoming more frequent, his questions more insistent. He brought others to observe her too, elder female wolves, their fur streaked with gray, their eyes sharp with centuries of wisdom, would sit in her room, their gazes piercing, trying to read her essence. They would sniff the air around her, their nostrils flaring, their brows furrowing in deep concentration. Wren felt like a specimen under a microscope, her very being dissected by their ancient knowledge. "Her scent is layered," one elder, a stern-faced female named Morwen, stated after a particularly long session of scrutiny. "There is human, yes, undeniable, but beneath it, a raw, untamed wolf essence, pure yet unaligned. I have never encountered its like." And the shift, another elder, a more contemplative male named Wren, added, "Spontaneous, violent, without the guidance of an established lineage or even prior knowledge of her latent abilities. This is highly unusual." Rooric, seated by the fire, would listen intently, his golden eyes never leaving Wren. He absorbed their observations, piecing together the puzzle of her existence. He pushed them for explanations, for precedents, for any scrap of lore that might illuminate her unique shift. But they had nothing concrete, only theories and superstitions. Wren, listening to their hushed conversations, began to grasp the true extent of her anomaly. She wasn't just a human who shifted. She was an enigma, a potential harbinger of something new or something deeply unsettling to their ancient kind. The fact that she had rejected her alpha's claim, a primal instinct that should have been undeniable for any true mate, only added to the mystery surrounding her. It made her both a prize and a potential threat. During one of Roric's visits, he brought a set of heavy, leather-bound tomes, ancient scrolls filled with faded script and intricate illustrations. He spread them on the small table, his finger tracing symbols. "I have been researching," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "Ancient texts, forgotten prophecies. There are whispers of humans, born with dormant wolf blood, whose shifts are triggered by extreme emotional trauma or life-threatening situations. They are called awakened." Wren listened, a strange mix of fascination and unease stirring within her. "Awakened?" she repeated, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. "Yes. They are said to possess unique strengths, a blend of human cunning and raw wolf power, unburdened by the traditional hierarchies of pack lineage. Their shifts are often unpredictable, their powers formidable." He looked at her, his golden eyes intense. "And they are said to bond only with the strongest of alphas, those whose power can truly match their own. Or they challenge them." His words sent a chill down Wren's spine. The implications were clear. He saw her as both his destined mate and a potential challenge to his authority. The idea of her being an awakened explained so much: the violence of her shift, the raw power of her wolf form, and, most importantly, the primal urge to defy him despite his claim. "I am not bound by your prophecies," Wren declared, her voice firm even as a tremor of fear ran through her. "I am not yours. I am free." Rooric chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. "Freedom is a concept. Power is a reality, little wolf. You have tasted power, and you will learn to wield it, with me or against me." His words were a gauntlet thrown, a subtle challenge. Wren understood. He was testing her, assessing her limits, trying to understand the full extent of her unusual abilities. He wanted to break her defiance, to mold her into the mate he believed she was destined to be. But Wren had other plans. She spent her solitary hours in introspection, trying to access her wolf, to understand the raw power that lay dormant within her. She closed her eyes, focusing on the memory of the shift, the exhilarating rush of strength, the heightened senses. She tried to recreate the feeling, the tearing of muscle, the reshaping of bone. But it was elusive, like trying to grasp smoke. Her shifts remained uncontrolled, triggered only by extreme emotion or external stress. This lack of control was a vulnerability, a weakness she needed to overcome. Lyra, her guard, remained a stoic presence. She never spoke more than necessary, but Wren began to notice subtle shifts in her demeanor. A flicker of respect in her eyes, a softening of her usually stern expression when Wren spoke of her former pack, a hint of concern when Wren pushed herself too hard in her physical exercises. Wren, always attuned to human nuances, began to probe, cautiously. "Do you ever miss your old life, Lyra?" Wren asked one evening, as Lyra sat by the fire, meticulously sharpening her hunting knife. Lyra's hands stilled. Her golden eyes met Wren's, a flicker of surprise in their depths. "We are Blackwood now," she stated, her voice flat. "Our allegiance is to the Alpha. There is no old life, only what is now." "But there was a life before," Wren pressed gently. "A family, a home, memories. Are they simply erased?" Lyra's jaw tightened, and she returned to her knife, the scrape of steel against whetstone filling the silence. But Wren saw the subtle tremor in her hands, the slight tension in her shoulders. Lyra was not a mindless drone. She was a warrior, loyal to her alpha, but she carried her own burdens, her own history. This was a potential crack in Roric's impenetrable wall of control, a small vulnerability Wren intended to explore. Her time in captivity, while frustrating, was also becoming a crucible. She was learning about her unique nature as an awakened shifter. She was learning about the Blackwood Pack, their strengths, their rigid rules, and the subtle currents of dissent or unfulfilled desires that lay beneath the surface. And she was learning about Rooric, the formidable alpha who claimed her as his mate, yet whose actions betrayed a desperate need to understand and control the unprecedented power she represented. The scent of pine and raw power continued to envelop her, but Wren now felt a strange sense of belonging to this new, terrifying existence. She was no longer just a human slave. She was an anomaly, a potential legend, a queen in waiting, and the path to her crown, she realized, would be paved not just with defiance, but with understanding, strategy, and the unpredictable power of her newly awakened wolf. The game had truly begun. Whispers of discontent and the power of observation the days in Roric's lodge continued, a strange blend of captivity and observation. Wren's attempts to consciously shift remained futile, yet the raw power of her wolf pulsed beneath her skin, a constant reminder of what she had become. Her bond with Lyra, her stoic guard, slowly began to thaw, a testament to Wren's inherent ability to connect with people, even those hardened by pack life. Wren discovered that Lyra, despite her unwavering loyalty to Rooric, harbored a quiet resentment for the Alpha's ruthless efficiency. Lyra had lost her own mate and a young pup in a previous skirmish, a loss that Rooric, consumed by his ambition for expansion, had dismissed as an unfortunate but necessary casualty of war. Lyra's loyalty was born of duty, not affection. "He does not understand loss," Lyra murmured one evening, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes fixed on the flickering fire. "He sees only strength, conquest. The pack thrives, yes, but at what cost to the individual heart?" Wren listened, her human empathy keenly sensing the unspoken pain beneath Lyra's words. "My pack, the Crimson Moon," Wren began, her voice soft. "We valued every life, humans and shifters alike. We believed a pack was stronger when its members felt safe, cherished, not just when they felt dominated." Lyra's gaze met Wren's, a flicker of something akin to understanding passing between them. It was a dangerous conversation, a subtle challenge to Roric's authoritarian rule, but it was a crack in the facade of unwavering obedience. Wren realized that Lyra, a formidable warrior, harbored a quiet longing for a different kind of leadership, one that prioritized the well-being of its members over ruthless expansion. This was a seed of discontent, a potential ally in her growing determination to dismantle Roric's reign. During Roric's visits, Wren began to subtly shift her approach. Instead of outright defiance, she adopted a more observant, analytical posture. She listened to his questions, not just for the information he sought, but for the information he inadvertently revealed about himself, his ambitions, his insecurities. She learned that Rooric was consumed by the desire to unify the fractured werewolf territories under his rule, to create a singular, dominant pack that stretched across the continent. He believed his power was absolute, his destiny inevitable. "Your wolf is a mystery, Wren," Rooric stated one afternoon, his voice a low rumble. He paced her small room, his powerful frame radiating restless energy. "It holds a potential I have never seen, a pure, raw power, untainted by lineage. It is why the bond is so strong, so undeniable. You are meant to amplify my power, to solidify my rule." Wren simply met his gaze, her expression carefully neutral. She allowed him to interpret her silence as submission, even as her mind raced, processing his words. Untainted by lineage. This meant she wasn't beholden to the traditional pack hierarchy. Her power was unique, a wild card, meant to amplify his power. This was his ambition, his design for her. But Wren had her own designs. Her understanding of the Blackwood Pack structure deepened. She observed the different warrior ranks, the unspoken rivalries, the quiet resentments among those who felt overlooked or undervalued. She noticed that Valerius, Roric's beta, while outwardly loyal, held a subtle tension in his posture around his alpha, a careful deference that bordered on suppressed ambition. He was ambitious, disciplined, but lacked Roric's raw charisma and primal force. He was a perfect second in command, that perhaps coveted the first position. Wren also used her human hours to secretly gather information. While tending to the campfires, she'd listen to the warriors' chatter, picking up snippets of information about patrols, supply routes, and even discontent among the lower ranks. She overheard whispers of resentment about Roric's harsh discipline, his seemingly endless conquests, and the toll it took on their families. The Blackwood Pack, while outwardly unified, had internal fissures. One evening, while Lyra was on duty, a distant howl echoed through the forest, a strange, disjointed sound that sent a ripple of unease through the camp. It was not a familiar Blackwood howl, nor a recognized warning. Roric stormed into Wren's room shortly after, his wolf eyes blazing with frustration. "Another rogue," he growled, pacing. "Unaffiliated, elusive, they refuse to be brought into the fold. This territory is mine, and yet these whispers of resistance persist." Wren listened, her mind forming connections. Rogue shifters, refusing Roric's dominion. Perhaps there were others like her, individuals who chafed under the iron paw of the Blackwood Alpha. Or perhaps they were simply remnants of smaller packs, scattered survivors seeking refuge from his relentless expansion. These rogues, these whispers of resistance, represented a potential network of allies. A glimmer of hope for an escape. She began to subtly test her limits. During her supervised walks around the lodge grounds, she would occasionally feign a stumble, subtly testing the reaction time of her guards, assessing the blind spots in their vigilance. She noticed that the window in her room, though barred, might offer a slim chance if she could somehow remove the rusted nails holding the bars in place. It would be a slow, painstaking process, requiring a tool, however crude. Her biggest challenge remained controlling her shifts. She was a weapon, yes, but an unpredictable one. The primal urges of her wolf were still a mystery. She needed to understand how to call upon it, how to shift at will, not just in moments of extreme duress. She spent hours meditating, trying to connect with the raw power that lay dormant within her, visualizing her wolf form, willing it to emerge. But the connection remained elusive, a tantalizing whisper beyond her grasp. Rooric, still consumed by his belief in their destined bond, continued to press his claim, albeit subtly. He would talk about their future, about the power they could wield together, about the unified pack they would build. "You feel the pull, little wolf," he would say, his voice a low, persuasive rumble. "The mate bond is undeniable. It will strengthen us both." Wren would meet his gaze, her expression unyielding. "A bond forced by conquest is not a true bond," she would counter, her voice laced with a quiet defiance. "And power gained through domination is fragile." He would merely chuckle, a dark, confident sound. "We shall see, Wren. We shall see." But Wren knew. She was no longer a human slave, cowed by fear. She was an awakened, a unique power simmering beneath her skin, armed with sharpened observation and a growing network of silent resentment within Roric's own pack. The Alpha might call her mate, but Wren was meticulously charting a path that led not to his side, but to his downfall, and to a crown she intended to claim for herself. The first whispers of discontent were spreading, and Wren was ready to turn them into a roar. The seed of betrayal, the subtle shift in Lyra's demeanor, continued to be Wren's most promising avenue for escape. Lyra, while still vigilant, began to offer small, unspoken concessions. A slightly longer pause at the door during her rounds, a moment when her gaze might drift to the barred window, a brief hesitation before reporting Wren's more defiant statements to Rooric. These were tiny cracks, almost imperceptible, but to Wren's honed senses they were wide enough to slip through. One frigid morning, as Wren performed her allotted duties in the main lodge, preparing herbs for tinctures under Lyra's watchful eye, she overheard a hushed conversation between two senior warriors. They spoke of a recent failed hunting expedition, a significant loss of game that would impact the pack's winter stores. More importantly, they spoke of Roric's ruthless decision to punish the failed hunters, not with a simple reprimand, but with public humiliation and reduced rations for their families. "It is too harsh," one warrior muttered, his voice barely audible. Our bellies will suffer, and our pups, all for one error." "The Alpha shows no mercy for weakness," the other replied, a weary resignation in his tone. "He sees only the pack's strength, not its individual members' struggles." Wren caught Lyra's eye. The elder warrior's face remained impassive, but Wren saw the flicker of pain, the tightening of her jaw. Lyra, who had lost her own kin, understood the cruelty of Roric's dispassionate leadership. This was the moment. Later that day, as Lyra stood guard in Wren's room, Wren spoke, her voice low and direct. "He punishes loyalty. He sacrifices his own for the illusion of unwavering strength. Do you believe this is the path to true power, Lyra?" Lyra's gaze snapped to Wren, sharp and wary. "Watch your words, human," she warned, though her voice lacked its usual force. "I am not human, Lyra," Wren retorted, her eyes blazing with newfound conviction. "And you know it. I am an awakened, and I see what you see. A pack ruled by fear, not by respect. A leader who consumes his own rather than nurturing them." She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a persuasive whisper. "The Crimson Moon was weaker in numbers, yes, but we were strong in spirit, in loyalty, in compassion, because our Alpha cared for every single one of us." Lyra's eyes softened imperceptibly. "Compassion makes one weak in this world," she said, though her conviction seemed to waver. "No," Wren countered, her voice firm. "It makes one strong, because a pack that feels cherished will fight harder, risk more. They will not resent their Alpha, they will revere him. Or her." She held Lyra's gaze, letting the unspoken implication hang in the air. Lyra looked away, her gaze drifting to the barred window. Wren followed her glance, then spoke casually. "These bars, they seem old, rusted. Do you think they could withstand a determined force?" Lyra's eyes snapped back to Wren, a flicker of understanding, then alarm in their depths. She knew what Wren was implying. This was not a request for escape. It was an invitation to rebellion. "What are you suggesting?" Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Freedom," Wren stated simply. "Not just for me, but for all of us. For a pack that values life, not just conquest. For a leader who understands compassion, not just command." She met Lyra's gaze, her eyes unwavering. "Roric fears me because he cannot control me. He calls me mate to claim my power, but he does not understand it. He does not understand my will, and he certainly does not understand yours." Lyra's silence was heavy, pregnant with unspoken thoughts. Wren waited, letting her words sink in, letting the seed of betrayal sprout in the hardened soil of Lyra's suppressed resentment. The decision was Lyra's now. The next few days were excruciating. Wren continued her duties, maintaining her neutral facade, but her senses were hyperware, waiting for Lyra's response. She pushed herself to explore her shifting ability further, entering a meditative state, trying to visualize the transformation, willing it to happen. The connection was still elusive, but she felt a faint tremor beneath her skin, a whisper of power that promised eventual control. One evening, as the moon climbed high, casting long, silvery shadows across the forest, Lyra entered Wren's room. She carried a small, wrapped bundle, a discreet package hidden beneath her cloak. Her expression was grim, determined. She placed the bundle on the small wooden table. "For your exercises," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet her eyes held a silent understanding. Wren unwrapped the bundle. Inside, nestled among soft cloths, were two items: a length of thin but incredibly strong braided sinew, and a small, crudely fashioned but sharp metal pick, clearly made from a discarded piece of metal. It was a tool for escape, a tool for defiance. Wren looked at Lyra, a surge of triumph mixed with profound gratitude welling within her. "Thank you, Lyra," she said, her voice sincere. "You will not regret this." Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the barred window, then on the metal pick. "The night of the full moon," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "Roric and the warriors will be occupied with the hunt. The patrols will be thinner. There will be a window, a few hours, but you must be ready. And you must control your shift. I cannot guarantee your safety outside these walls." Wren's heart pounded. The full moon was only 3 nights away. It was a terrifyingly short window, but it was a chance. Lyra had made her choice. The seed of betrayal had taken root, nurtured by a shared understanding of Roric's tyranny and a longing for something more. The metal pick was small, but with meticulous, patient effort, Wren knew she could slowly work at the rusted nails of the window bars. The sinew could be used for a variety of purposes. A makeshift rope, a binding. This was not just a tool for escape. It was a symbol of hope, a tangible sign that she was no longer alone in her defiance. In the quiet hours of the night, as the camp slept, Wren began her work. The faint scrape of metal against wood, a silent rebellion against the alpha who believed he owned her. She was not just plotting her freedom, she was carving her path to a different kind of power, one rooted in alliance and understanding, not just brute force. The escape was just the first step. The true challenge, the ultimate aim, was to dismantle the very system that had enslaved her and to forge a new future where a human-born awakened could claim a crown. The full moon's promise the next 3 nights passed in a feverish blend of anticipation and meticulous preparation. Wren worked tirelessly, using the crude metal pick Lyra had provided, to slowly, painstakingly loosen the rusted nails holding the bars on her window. The work was arduous, the scrapes and blisters on her hands a small price to pay for the promise of freedom. She muted the faint metallic sounds with scraps of cloth, her heightened senses making her painfully aware of every creak in the lodge, every distant growl of a passing guard. Her mental exercises to control her shift intensified. She spent hours in silent meditation, focusing on the primal urges that had erupted during her first transformation. She tried to recreate the feeling of power, the tearing of muscle, the expansion of bone. She visualized her wolf form, immense and powerful, running through the forest, free. The connection remained elusive, but she felt a subtle stirring beneath her skin, a deeper resonance with her wolf. It was still largely uncontrolled, a wild force, but she felt closer to harnessing its power than ever before. Lyra remained stoic, but her silent support was palpable. She brought Wren extra food, thicker blankets, and even, once, a small, worn map of the Blackwood territory, subtly indicating possible routes to the south, away from the core of Roric's control. It was a clear sign of Lyra's commitment to Wren's escape, a dangerous act of defiance against her alpha. "There are whispers of other rogue shifters to the south," Lyra whispered during one of her brief checks, her gaze fixed on the forest beyond the window. "They resist Roric's attempts to absorb them. They are wary, but they might offer refuge for an awakened if you can prove your intentions." Wren nodded, absorbing the crucial information. Rogue shifters. Potential allies. Her plan was solidifying. Escape, find these rogues, gain their trust, and then, perhaps, return to challenge Rooric with a force that matched his own. Finally, the night of the full moon arrived. A magnificent, pearlescent orb hung heavy in the velvet sky, casting a soft, ethereal glow over the vast forest. The air crackled with a primal energy, a hum that resonated deep within Wren's newfound wolf blood. She could hear the distant howls of the Blackwood Pack, their voices rising and falling in a joyous, triumphant chorus as they prepared for the communal hunt, their annual ritual of power and dominance. This was her window. Roric and most of the seasoned warriors would be deep in the forest, their senses consumed by the hunt, their focus entirely on the pack's ritual. The patrols around the lodge would be thinner, manned by younger, less experienced wolves, or those not strong enough to join the main hunt. Wren waited, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She could feel the wildness of the moon's power pulling at her, a strange, exhilarating current that promised strength, but also unpredictability. This was the most dangerous part, controlling her shift, ensuring it happened when she willed it, not when overwhelming emotion seized her. As the howls receded into the depths of the forest, and the camp settled into a deceptive quiet, Lyra appeared at her door, a silent shadow. She carried a small, sturdy backpack filled with essentials: dried meat, a water skin, a sharper hunting knife, and a compass. "The time is now," Lyra whispered, her golden eyes reflecting the moon's glow, a hint of apprehension in their depths. "The back gate, near the old training grounds. A guard will be distracted." She pressed a small, crude map into Wren's hand, marking a specific path south. "Go, and do not look back." Wren clutched the map, a surge of gratitude overwhelming her. "Thank you, Lyra, for everything." Lyra merely nodded, her gaze hardening with a flicker of old pain. "Go," she repeated, her voice urgent. "Before he returns." Wren turned to the window. The nails, after hours of painstaking work, were loose, the bars now pliable. With a grunt of effort, she slowly, carefully, pulled one bar free, then another, creating a narrow gap. She peered out into the moonlit forest. The air was cool, fresh, filled with the promise of freedom. She squeezed through the narrow opening, her muscles protesting, the rough edges of the window frame scraping against her skin. She dropped lightly to the ground, landing silently on the soft earth. Her senses, even in human form, were acutely aware of the forest around her. She moved with swift, silent purpose, following Lyra's whispered instructions, making her way towards the back gate. The scent of other wolves, faint but present, indicated nearby patrols. She flattened herself against the shadows of the ancient trees, her heart hammering, her ears straining for any sound. She reached the back gate, a sturdy wooden structure partially hidden by overgrown bushes. A single, young warrior stood guard, his back turned, his attention seemingly fixed on a distant rustle in the undergrowth. This was Lyra's distraction. Wren didn't hesitate. She slipped through the gate, her movements fluid and silent as a whisper. The forest swallowed her whole. She ran, her lungs burning, her legs pumping, putting as much distance as possible between herself and the Blackwood camp. The sounds of the full moon hunt grew fainter, slowly fading behind her. She followed the subtle path Lyra had marked, heading south, deeper into the unknown. But as she ran, a primal urge began to stir within her, a response to the raw power of the full moon, a resonance with her awakened wolf. Her skin prickled, her muscles twitched, and the familiar, terrifying heat began to build in her veins. She felt the urge to shift, not just as a desperate reaction, but as a surge of exhilarating power, a deep-seated need to unleash the beast within. She couldn't risk it, not yet, not while she was still so close to Blackwood territory. not while she lacked full control. She needed to be further away, in a safer, more secluded space. She pushed harder, running faster, desperately trying to outrun the rising tide of her own transformation. But the full moon's call was undeniable, a potent force thrumming through her very being. The pain, though less agonizing than her first, unexpected shift, began to intensify, her body protesting the containment of its raw power. Wren knew, with a chilling certainty, that the shift was coming. And this time, she needed to control it, to harness its power, not be consumed by it. Her escape was successful, but the true challenge of her awakened nature was about to begin. Under the unforgiving gaze of the full moon, a symbol of both her power and her peril. The wilderness test, the primal urge to shift, surged through Wren, overwhelming her as she fled deeper into the forest under the full moon's luminescence. The pain, though familiar, was more controlled now, a deep ache beneath her skin, a stretching sensation that pulled at her muscles. She didn't fight it this time, she acknowledged it, allowing the raw power to course through her veins. She focused on the visualization, on the image of her wolf, immense and powerful, running free. Her transformation was still violent, but it felt less chaotic, less like an uncontrolled eruption. Her bones stretched and reconfigured, her human skin giving way to a rich, dark fur. A guttural roar tore from her throat, a sound of agony mixed with exhilaration, as she collapsed onto all fours. When her vision cleared, she was in her wolf form, larger and more powerful than she remembered. The forest floor, damp and cold just moments before, was now a tapestry of textures and scents beneath her sensitive paws. Every leaf, every patch of moss, every distant creature was a vibrant presence in her hypertuned senses. The moonlight filtered through the canopy, painting the forest in shades of silver and deep shadow, and she felt an exhilarating sense of belonging, of raw, untamed power. She tested her new form, pushing off the ground, her powerful legs propelling her forward in a silent, effortless lope. She was faster, stronger, her movements fluid and graceful. The scent of the Blackwood Pack was fading behind her, replaced by the wild, untamed fragrances of the deep forest. She was free, truly free, for the first time since the war. But freedom in the wilderness was not without its dangers. The forest was a complex ecosystem, filled with both prey and predators. And more critically, it was filled with other shifters, rogue or otherwise, whose intentions were unknown. Lyra's warning about wary rogue shifters echoed in her mind. Wren needed to be cautious, to conserve her strength, and to, most importantly, learn to control her shifts at will. She spent the next few days in a constant state of vigilance, moving deeper south, guided by Lyra's crude map and her own keen senses. She hunted small game, her wolf instincts proving surprisingly adept. The raw meat filled her with a primal energy, a deep satisfaction she had never known as a human. She found secluded dens for rest, hidden among ancient roots or within rocky overhangs, always alert to the slightest change in the wind, the subtlest shift in the forest sounds. Her biggest challenge was shifting back to her human form. The return was always more difficult, a wrestling match against her wolf's primal desire to remain in its powerful, unburdened state. It required immense concentration, a calming of her wild instincts, and a focused visualization of her human self. The process was often painful, leaving her exhausted and disoriented. But with each successful shift, she gained a fraction more control, a deeper understanding of the bridge between her two selves. During her human moments, she studied Lyra's map, memorizing landmarks, plotting her course. She also reflected on Roric, his claim of mate, and the prophecies of the awakened. The idea of being destined to amplify his power grated against her very being. Her journey wasn't about finding a mate, it was about forging her own path, securing her own power, and ultimately seeking justice for her fallen pack. One evening, as dusk settled over the forest, Wren caught a new scent on the wind, the undeniable musk of another pack, distinct from the Blackwood. It was faint, carried on the breeze, but it was there, signaling either alliance or danger. She shifted back to her wolf form, her hackles rising instinctively, her powerful senses on high alert. She followed the scent cautiously, her movements silent, her massive wolf form blending seamlessly with the deepening shadows. She moved with a primal grace, her every muscle poised for action. As she drew closer, she heard voices, hushed but discernible, carried on the wind. They were not Blackwood voices. Their dialect was softer, less guttural. She approached a clearing, hidden behind a thick stand of pines. Below, nestled in a small valley, was a hidden encampment. Not as vast as Blackwood, but clearly a pack. There were fewer wolves, and their tents and shelters were more rustic, more camouflaged. She saw children, laughing as they played, and older wolves tending to a fire, their expressions less stern, more relaxed than Roric's warriors. These were the rogues Lyra had spoken of, the ones resisting Roric's expansion. As she observed them, hidden in the shadows, her keen wolf eyes caught a movement. A lone wolf, a dark gray male, emerged from the tree line, carrying a freshly caught deer. He was lean, agile, and moved with a quiet competence. As he entered the camp, the other wolves greeted him with warm barks and nuzzles, a clear sign of respect and affection. He was clearly an alpha, but his demeanor was different from Roric's, less overtly dominant, more communal. Wren watched, fascinated. This was her opportunity, but approaching a strange pack, especially as an unknown wolf, was fraught with peril. She could be perceived as a threat, a spy, or worse, a rogue without a pack, fair game for any dominant male. She needed a strategy, a way to approach them that conveyed her intentions without triggering their defensive instincts. She shifted back to her human form, the process still leaving her breathless but more controlled. She dressed in the simple clothes Lyra had provided, then carefully gathered a handful of wild berries and edible roots she had learned to identify in the wilderness. An offering, a gesture of peace. Taking a deep breath, Wren stepped out from the shadows into the fading light of dusk and walked slowly towards the encampment. Her heart pounded, a drum against her ribs. She was vulnerable, exposed, but she was also armed with knowledge, with purpose, and with the undeniable power of her awakened wolf, dormant for now, but ready to erupt if needed. As she stepped into the clearing, a ripple of alarm swept through the rogue pack. Growls erupted, and wolves shifted, their forms massive and imposing, their golden eyes fixed on her. The gray alpha stepped forward, his eyes wary, a low warning growl rumbling in his chest. Wren stopped, her hands raised in a gesture of peace, the wild berries held openly. "I mean you no harm," she called out, her voice clear and steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I seek refuge. I am Wren, formerly of the Crimson Moon Pack, and I am an awakened." The word hung in the air, a potent declaration. The gray alpha's eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief, then intense curiosity, replacing his wary suspicion. The other shifters remained tense, but their growls softened, their forms less overtly hostile. Wren knew this was her moment. The wilderness had tested her, forced her to harness her power. Now, the true test began. convincing a skeptical pack that she was not a threat, but a valuable, perhaps even powerful ally in their shared struggle against Roric's relentless dominion. Her journey to claim her crown had just found its next, critical step. The Rogue Pack's skepticism, the tension in the Rogue Pack's encampment was palpable, a live current humming in the twilight air. Wren stood, hands outstretched, the wild berries a silent offering, her eyes fixed on the gray alpha. His name, she would soon learn, was Kale, and his pack, the Timberfang, was a collection of wary, independent shifters who had chosen exile over submission to Roric's iron rule. Kale's wolf form was imposing, his hackles slightly raised, his golden eyes assessing her with a piercing intensity. His posture was defensive, but she sensed a flicker of curiosity beneath his caution. The other Timberfang warriors, a circle of formidable wolves, remained tense, their growls low and rumbling, their suspicions evident. "An awakened?" Kale finally rumbled, his voice deep and resonant. "A human-born shifter? Such tales are old, whispered legends, never seen." "I am living proof," Wren replied, her voice unwavering. "My shift was violent, unexpected, triggered by extreme duress, as the legends say." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I was a slave to the Blackwood. Alpha Rooric himself claimed me as his mate, believing my power would strengthen his." The mention of Roric's name sent a ripple of collective growls through the Timberfang pack. Their hatred for the Blackwood Alpha was clear, a shared scar of past conflicts and relentless pursuit. Roric's mate? Kale's eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion returning to his gaze. A strange claim for a refugee seeking shelter from him. "Why should we believe you are not a spy sent to infiltrate our sanctuary?" "Because I rejected his claim," Wren stated, her voice imbued with a fierce quote. Conviction that surprised even herself. "Because I fled his tyranny, not out of fear, but out of a burning desire for freedom. And because I seek allies, not masters. My pack, the Crimson Moon, was destroyed by Rooric. I seek justice and a world where shifters like us who value peace and community can thrive without constant threat." She looked directly at Kale, meeting his gaze with an unwavering intensity. "I offer you my unique power, my knowledge of Roric's methods, and my unwavering commitment to his downfall. In return, I ask for refuge, for guidance in controlling my new abilities, and for a chance to fight for a future where no one is enslaved, and no pack is unjustly conquered." Kale's silence stretched, heavy with consideration. The other Timberfang wolves remained tense, their distrust palpable. He slowly shifted back to his human form, a lean, agile man with kind but wary eyes. His fur, a beautiful dark gray, reappeared as thick, well-groomed hair. "You speak bold words, Wren of the Crimson Moon," Kale said, his voice calmer now, but still laced with caution. "Words are easily spoken. Proof is harder to come by." He gestured to his pack. "You expect us to believe that a human who supposedly just shifted possesses such power that Rooric himself would claim her? And that you can defy a mate bond, a primal force?" "The mate bond," Wren explained, her mind racing, recalling Roric's own research, "is said to be strongest with alphas whose power truly matches an awakened. But a bond forced by conquest or born of obsession can be rejected by a strong will. My will is strong." She paused, then added, "And as for proof, I do not control my shifts yet, but I carry the raw power within me, and I offer to demonstrate it if you grant me a safe space to attempt to harness it, away from the dangers of the open forest. Kale's gaze was speculative, a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. He exchanged a silent glance with a large female warrior, his beta, her expression unreadable. After a moment, he nodded slowly. Very well, we will offer you shelter, but you will be watched closely. Any sign of deception, any threat to my pack, and you will face our full wrath. He turned to the beta. Lyra, take her to the communal lodge, ensure she has what she needs, and observe her. Report every detail. My name is not Lyra, the female beta corrected, her voice firm. It is Naya, Alpha, and I will. Wren felt a jolt of relief, quickly followed by a fresh wave of apprehension. Lyra, her former guard, had been a crucial ally. Naya, Kale's beta, was an unknown quantity, a new layer of scrutiny. But it was a chance, a precious opportunity she couldn't afford to squander. The Timberfang encampment was smaller and more humble than Blackwood, but it radiated a sense of quiet community and resilience. The communal lodge was a large, sturdy structure, warmer and more inviting than Roric's austere quarters. Naya led Wren to a secluded corner, offering her furs for warmth and a bowl of rich stew. Eat, Naya commanded, her voice curt but not unkind. You will need your strength. She then took a seat opposite Wren, her golden eyes watchful, her senses alert to every nuance of Wren's behavior. Wren ate slowly, savoring the warmth of the stew, her mind racing. She was under intense scrutiny, every action, every word, every subtle scent of her being analyzed. She knew she had to earn their trust, not just through her words, but through her actions, through proving her power and her loyalty to their shared cause against Rooric. The first few days were a tense dance of caution and observation. Wren helped with daily chores, quietly observing the Timberfang pack dynamics. She noticed their deep respect for Kale, a different kind of respect than the fear-based deference Rooric commanded. Kale led with quiet authority, valuing the input of his pack members, ensuring their well-being, and fostering a fierce, protective loyalty rooted in shared adversity. She also continued her efforts to control her shifts, seeking out secluded spots in the forest where she could meditate and try to connect with her wolf. The task remained frustratingly elusive, her shifts still unpredictable, triggered only by moments of extreme emotion or perceived threat. This lack of control was a vulnerability, a ticking time bomb. One afternoon, while foraging for herbs with Nia, a rogue Blackwood patrol, deep within Timberfang territory, unexpectedly ambushed them. The Blackwood warriors, their dark fur a stark contrast to the dappled sunlight, appeared suddenly, their snarls echoing through the trees. Naya, fierce and protective, immediately shifted, her gray wolf form massive and ready for battle. Wren, caught off guard, felt the familiar surge of power, the tearing agony of an uncontrolled shift. But this time, it was different. It was triggered by the need to protect, to fight alongside Naya, a sudden, fierce loyalty to her newfound fragile alliance. Her shift was violent, a roar tearing from her throat as her body twisted and expanded. When the transformation was complete, Wren stood beside Naya, her dark wolf form larger and more powerful than any of the Blackwood invaders. Her amber eyes blazed with a primal fury, a silent promise of vengeance for past wrongs. The Blackwood patrol, initially confident, faltered. Their snarls died in their throats as they stared at Wren, their eyes wide with disbelief and terror. The human slave, the one Rooric had claimed as his mate, had shifted, and she was a force of nature, a terrifying, beautiful display of raw, untamed power. Their fear was palpable, a sweet scent on the wind. The test, Wren knew, had just begun, and she would not be found wanting. The power unleashed the Blackwood patrol, initially confident in their ambush, faltered and then outright quivered as Wren's massive, dark wolf form materialized beside Naya. Her sudden, powerful appearance, combined with the potent, unknown scent of an awakened shifter, was a shock to their system. They had been told the human slave was nothing more than a curious anomaly, certainly not a formidable opponent. Their snarls died in their throats, replaced by whimpers of confusion and dawning fear. Naya, beside Wren, let out a fierce, triumphant growl, her gray fur bristling. She had witnessed Wren's power firsthand, and the sight of the terrified Blackwood warriors, their arrogance dissolving into fear, filled her with a grim satisfaction. Wren felt the surge of primal fury, an instinct to protect, to dominate, to destroy the ones who had enslaved her. Her amber eyes, now fully lupine and burning with intensity, locked onto the lead Blackwood warrior, a heavily scarred male whose earlier swagger had evaporated. She moved with lightning speed, a blur of dark fur, tackling him before he could react. Her powerful jaws snapped, not aiming for a killing blow, but for a display of overwhelming force, a warning. The warrior cried out, pinned beneath her, his terrified whimpers echoing through the forest. The other Blackwood wolves, demoralized by the sudden turn of events and the sheer power of Wren's wolf, hesitated. Their training dictated retreat when faced with overwhelming odds, especially against an unknown, terrifying force. "Fall back," one of them howled, his voice laced with panic. "It's the awakened, the alpha's mate." The words were a jumble of fear and confusion. The Blackwood patrol broke formation, scattering into the trees, their tails tucked between their legs. Wren let them go, her powerful wolf form trembling with a mixture of residual rage and the fading adrenaline of the fight. She stood over the pinned warrior for a moment longer, her hackles raised, a silent promise of future vengeance in her amber gaze. Then, with a guttural snarl, she released him. The warrior scrambled to his feet, yelping, and disappeared into the forest, undoubtedly to report their terrifying encounter to Alpha Roric. Naya shifted back to her human form, her chest heaving, her eyes wide with awe as she looked at Wren, still in her magnificent wolf form. "Remarkable," Naya breathed, her voice filled with genuine respect. "You were formidable. Stronger than any Blackwood warrior I have ever seen." Wren, still pulsing with the raw power of her shift, felt a thrill of triumph. She had fought, she had protected, and she had demonstrated her unique strength. This was the proof Kale had demanded. This was the beginning of earning their trust. She focused, willing her wolf to recede, visualizing her human form, calming the primal urges. The shift back was still difficult, but with the adrenaline still coursing through her, it felt more controlled than before. She returned to her human self, naked and vulnerable, but standing tall, a new sense of confidence radiating from her. Naya quickly threw her a spare cloak, her expression a mix of awe and relief. "Come," she urged. "We must return to Kale. He needs to know what happened." Word of the encounter spread like wildfire through the Timberfang pack. Wren was no longer just a refugee, a curiosity. She was a warrior, a force to be reckoned with. The skepticism in the pack began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious respect, even admiration. When Wren and Naya returned to the encampment, Kale was waiting, his lean face etched with concern. He listened intently as Nia recounted the ambush and Wren's terrifying, powerful shift, her description almost reverent. Kale's golden eyes, usually calm and thoughtful, widened with dawning understanding as Naya described Wren's size and ferocity in wolf form. "You faced a Blackwood patrol," Cale stated, his voice low, "and you not only repelled them, but you instilled fear in them. This is significant." He looked at Wren, a new respect dawning in his gaze. "The legends speak of awakened shifters, yes, but their true power was always a mystery. You have given us a glimpse." "I told you I was not a spy," Wren said, her voice firm. "I told you I sought allies, not masters. And I told you I would fight for justice against Rooric." Cale nodded slowly. "You have proved your word, Wren of the Crimson Moon. We believe you, and we welcome you to the Timberfang Pack as an ally, not a prisoner, not a guest." He extended his hand, a gesture of genuine acceptance. "Welcome home." Wren took his hand, a wave of relief washing over her. This was the first time she had felt truly welcomed, truly accepted, since the fall of her pack. She was no longer alone. Life with the Timberfang Pack was a stark contrast to her time in Blackwood. Cale's leadership was indeed rooted in respect and compassion. He consulted with his pack elders, listened to the concerns of his warriors, and prioritized the well-being of every member. Discipline was firm but fair, rooted in the collective good, not in a display of brute force. The pack lived simply, their focus on survival, community, and protecting their freedom from Roric's relentless expansion. Wren trained diligently with the Timberfang warriors. She learned how to move silently through the forest, how to track prey, how to fight strategically as a wolf. She learned control, focusing her mind, calming her instincts, and consciously willing her shifts. It was still a struggle, but with each passing day, her mastery grew. She could now shift with greater ease, the pain lessening, the transition becoming more fluid. She still couldn't shift completely at will, requiring a significant emotional trigger or a deep level of concentration. But her progress was remarkable. Cale himself spent hours with her, teaching her to hone her wolf's senses, to understand its unique strengths. He recognized the raw power within her, and unlike Rooric, he sought to nurture it, not to control it for his own gain. He saw her as a powerful asset, a potential game-changer in their ongoing struggle against the Blackwood. "Your wolf is truly exceptional, Wren," Cale observed one evening, as they sat by a roaring fire discussing strategy. "Larger, faster, more resilient than any I have encountered. Your human cunning, combined with this raw power, makes you formidable. A true force to be reckoned with." Wren's confidence grew with each passing day. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a warrior, a valuable member of a pack that accepted her for who she was. The resentment she harbored for Rooric hardened into a cold, determined resolve. She would not forget her past, the destruction of her pack, her time as a slave, and she would not rest until Rooric paid for his crimes. The Timberfang Pack, scattered and wary, had found a new hope in Wren, the awakened human. She was their secret weapon, their symbol of defiance against the overwhelming might of the Blackwood. The time of hiding was slowly coming to an end. The time for a counterattack, for justice, was drawing near. And Wren, the once human slave, was ready to lead the charge, not as a mate, but as a queen who would forge her own destiny, and perhaps take the crown that Rooric believed was solely his. Whispers of war weeks turned into months, and Wren's integration into the Timberfang Pack became complete. She was no longer just an ally. She was a valued member, a fierce warrior, and a trusted confidant of Alpha Cale. Her mastery over her shifts grew steadily. While still not instantaneous or effortless, she could now shift to her powerful wolf form with a deliberate, focused effort, harnessing the surge of energy rather than being overwhelmed by it. The pain, though present, was a dull background hum, manageable and familiar. Shifting back was also becoming smoother, less disorienting. Her unique status as an awakened shifter, combined with her human intelligence and strategic thinking, made her an invaluable asset to the Timberfang. She helped Kale devise new hunting strategies, develop more efficient patrol routes, and even implement a more subtle system of communication among their scattered outposts. Using a blend of shifter signals and her human understanding of stealth and cryptography, the Timberfang pack was small, but their spirit was unyielding. They were a collective of survivors, and those who chafed under Roric's tyrannical rule. They were disparate fragments of packs Roric had crushed, and a few individuals who had simply chosen independence over submission. They shared a common enemy, and in Wren, they saw a potent symbol of hope, a potential liberator. News of Wren's survival and her powerful shift, carried by the terrified Blackwood patrol she had routed, slowly filtered back to Rooric. Initially, he dismissed it as exaggerated tales of fear-struck warriors, but as more reports trickled in, describing an impossibly large, dark-furred wolf with amber eyes, a cold certainty began to settle in his mind. The human slave, his supposed mate, had not only escaped, but she had embraced her awakened power and was now an active force against him. He sent out more patrols, more aggressive hunting parties, determined to find and reclaim her. The forest, once a vast, silent sanctuary, became a battleground of shadows and whispers, with Timberfang and Blackwood scouts constantly clashing in skirmishes. During this period of heightened tension, Wren dedicated herself to understanding the full extent of Roric's forces. She and Kale would spend hours poring over crude maps, plotting Roric's expansion, his supply lines, his key strongholds. Wren, drawing on her memories from her time as a slave, shared vital intelligence about Blackwood's internal structure, the personalities of Roric's key warriors, and even the subtle cracks of discontent she had observed within his own ranks. She described the quiet resentment Lyra harbored, the ambition of Valerius, Roric's beta. "Valerius is loyal, yes," Wren told Kale one evening, tracing a line on the map with her finger. "But his loyalty is to power. He is disciplined, a strategist. He follows Rooric because Rooric is the strongest alpha. But if Rooric were to show weakness, if there was another viable path to dominance, Valerius might be swayed." Kale listened intently, his gaze sharp and thoughtful. "A beta's ambition is a dangerous thing for an alpha to ignore," he mused. "You have a keen eye, Wren. You see not just the wolf, but the man beneath the fur. This is a powerful insight." Their strategy began to form. They could not defeat Rooric in a head-on confrontation. The Blackwood Pack was too numerous, too disciplined, too powerful. Their strength lay in their unity, their centralized command. The Timberfang's strength, conversely, lay in their agility, their knowledge of the land, and their unwavering conviction. They would chip away at Rooric's power, undermine his authority, and sow seeds of doubt among his followers. The whispers of war grew louder. Messages were sent to other rogue packs, to fragmented shifter families who had also refused Roric's dominion. Kale, with Wren by his side, began to forge a fragile alliance, uniting disparate groups under a common banner: the liberation from Roric's tyranny. Wren's story, the tale of the human slave who had shifted into a powerful awakened wolf, became a rallying cry, a symbol of hope for those who felt powerless. News of Wren's growing influence reached Rooric. His initial disdain morphed into a simmering fury. His mate, the one he believed was destined to amplify his power, was now actively undermining him, building an army against him. The insult was personal, a direct challenge to his absolute authority. He began to focus less on expansion and more on consolidation, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. He increased patrols, tightened security, and demanded even stricter loyalty from his warriors. The oppressive atmosphere within the Blackwood Pack intensified, further fueling the resentment among those who chafed under his iron paw. One cold, moonless night, a Timberfang scout returned with urgent news. Roric had called a grand meeting of his entire pack, an assembly rarely seen outside of major declarations of war or significant victories. He was making a public address, gathering his forces, preparing for a decisive confrontation. "He knows," Cale stated, his face grim. "He knows you are here, Wren. He knows you are rallying forces against him. He means to crush us, to make an example of you. He will not tolerate this defiance." Wren felt a cold knot of fear in her stomach, quickly replaced by a surge of grim determination. This was it. The confrontation she had been preparing for, the moment of reckoning. She pictured her fallen pack, their bodies broken, their spirits extinguished. She remembered the humiliation of slavery, the contempt in Roric's golden eyes. All of it fueled her resolve. "Let him come," Wren said, her voice low and steady, her amber eyes burning with a fierce resolve. "We will be ready. He believes I am his mate, destined to strengthen him. He will learn. I am here to take his crown." Cale looked at her, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. "The odds are still against us, Wren," he cautioned. "He commands a vast army. We are few. But we are united by conviction," Wren countered, her gaze unwavering. "By a desire for freedom, not just conquest. And we have a power he does not understand, one he thought he could possess, but cannot control." She turned to the map, pointing to a strategic location, a natural choke point within the forest, where their smaller forces could leverage the terrain against Roric's larger numbers. "We will meet him here, and we will remind him of the price of his arrogance." The call to arms went out across the allied rogue packs. Warriors, young and old, male and female, gathered at the designated meeting point, their faces grim but determined. They were a diverse collection, some still bearing the scars of Roric's conquests, others simply weary of living under his shadow. But they were united by a shared purpose, and by the legend of the awakened wolf, the former human slave who dared to challenge the most powerful alpha in the territories. Wren, standing beside Cale, felt the weight of their expectations and a profound sense of destiny. The war for the crown was no longer a whisper. It was a roar, echoing through the ancient forests, ready to shake the very foundations of the werewolf world. The gathering stormed the allied rogue packs converged, a disparate collection of shifters united by a common enemy. The clearing Cale and Wren had chosen for their gathering was a natural fortress, nestled deep within a labyrinth of ancient trees and jagged rock formations. It offered strategic advantages: narrow passes for defense, dense foliage for cover, and a single, dominant ridge that provided an excellent vantage point. Wren moved among the assembled shifters, her presence a quiet force of reassurance and inspiration. She was no longer just the mysterious, awakened. She was a proven warrior, a survivor, and a symbol of hope. Her powerful dark wolf form, now fully under her control, was a visible testament to her unique strength, radiating an aura of calm authority that commanded respect. The allied packs were a mosaic of individuals. The lean, agile Timberfang warriors, their gray pelts blending seamlessly with the shadows, the larger, more cautious Stoneclaw shifters. Their fur the color of granite, known for their defensive tactics. And the swift, silent riverbend wolves, their lighter fur hinting at their ancestral homes near flowing water. Many had lost loved ones to Roric's relentless expansion, their grief now transmuted into a cold, determined resolve. Kale stood by Wren's side, his presence a steady anchor. He introduced her formally to the alphas of the other rogue packs, acknowledging her role not just as an ally, but as a critical strategist and a symbol of their rebellion. "She is Wren, the Awakened," Kale announced to the assembled leaders, his voice carrying clearly. "Once a human slave of the Blackwood, now a powerful wolf who defied Alpha Roric's claim. Her strength is unlike any we have witnessed, and her insight into Roric's methods is invaluable. She walks with us, not under us, in this fight for our freedom." The other alphas, initially skeptical, nodded slowly as Wren met their gazes. They had heard the whispers, the exaggerated tales, but seeing her, sensing her controlled power, removed all doubt. Her calm confidence, devoid, quote, of Roric's arrogance, began to win them over. Wren then addressed the assembled shifters, her voice clear and strong, resonating with conviction. "Rooric believes he is invincible," she began, her words carrying the weight of her personal history. "He believes his power is absolute, his claim over this territory, over all of us, undeniable. He rules through fear and domination, crushing all who defy him. My own pack, the Crimson Moon, fell to his might. I was taken as a slave, branded as chattel." A murmur of resentment rippled through the crowd. Many had similar stories of loss and subjugation. But in that darkness, Wren continued, her voice gaining power. "Something awakened within me. A power I did not know I possessed. A power that he sought to claim, to control, to amplify his own reign. He calls me mate, a mockery of a bond rooted in respect and mutual strength. But I am not here to be his mate. I am here to take his crown." A wave of murmurs, then low growls of agreement, swept through the gathering. Wren's direct challenge, her personal stake in Roric's downfall, resonated deeply with their own desires for liberation. "We cannot meet Roric's army head-on," Wren explained, turning to a large map they had drawn on the ground, indicating strategic points. "His numbers are too vast, his forces too centralized. Our strength lies in our knowledge of this land, our agility and our unity. We will use the terrain against him. We will fragment his forces, creating chaos and disarray within his ranks. We will exploit his arrogance, his belief in his own invincibility." She outlined their strategy. Feigned retreats to lure Blackwood forces into narrow passes, surprise ambushes from hidden vantage points, and coordinated strikes at their supply lines. She shared her insights into Roric's psychological tactics, his tendency to underestimate those he deemed weak or human. "He believes he owns everything, including dissent," Wren stated, her eyes hard with resolve. "He will push his warriors harder, demand unquestioning obedience. This will create resentment, a fertile ground for doubt. Valerius," she looked at Kale, "Roric's beta, is ambitious. If Roric shows weakness, if his forces are sufficiently fragmented and demoralized, Valerius might see an opportunity to seize power for himself. We will exploit this internal strife." Kale nodded, a grim smile on his face. "A pack that fights itself is a pack that cannot stand." "A clever strategy, Wren." The days leading up to the inevitable confrontation were filled with intense training. Wren, alongside Kale, personally trained the allied warriors, focusing on stealth, coordinated attacks, and exploiting the unique strengths of their diverse wolf forms. She taught them to communicate silently, using subtle shifts in posture and scent to ensure seamless coordination during the chaos of battle. Her own gull shifts, now powerful and controlled, were a constant source of inspiration, demonstrating the potential within each of them. News of the Rogue Alliance and the presence of the awakened leader reached Rooric. His fury reached a boiling point. The audacity of the escaped slave, the female he had claimed, to not only defy him but to unite his enemies, was an unbearable insult. He saw it as a direct challenge to his alpha status, a personal affront that demanded brutal retribution. Rallied his entire pack, delivering a fiery speech filled with promises of swift vengeance and undisputed dominion. He painted the rogues as pathetic, scattered remnants, and Wren as a dangerous, uncontrollable anomaly who needed to be put down. His warriors, fueled by his charisma and their inherent loyalty, responded with thunderous howls of aggression. The date of the confrontation was set, a tense understanding that both sides were preparing for an epic clash. The air in the forest crackled with anticipation, the scent of fear and determination mingling with the crisp autumn air. On the eve of the battle, Wren stood on the dominant ridge overlooking the prepared battlefield, her powerful wolf form silhouetted against the rising moon. Kale stood beside her, his gray fur bristling slightly in the cool breeze. "Tomorrow," Kale rumbled, his voice low, "the fate of these territories will be decided, and, perhaps, the fate of our kind." Wren looked out at the vast, silent forest, imagining Roric's army massing in the distance. She thought of her fallen pack, of the humiliation she had endured, of the unexpected power that had awakened within her. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, unyielding resolve. "He calls me mate," Wren said, her voice a low growl, her amber eyes burning with a primal fire. "He believes he can control my power, own my destiny. He will learn, tomorrow, that I am not his mate. I am the storm that will break his reign. I am the queen who will take his crown." Kale looked at her, his golden eyes filled with a mixture of awe and unwavering loyalty. He knew, with a certainty that resonated through his very being, that Wren was not just a warrior, but a leader, a force of destiny. The stage was set, the storm was gathering, and the ancient forests were about to witness a battle that would redefine power, loyalty, and the very meaning of a crown. The dawn of war, the dawn broke cold caw, and gray, painting the forest in stark, monochromatic hues. A heavy mist clung to the ground, swirling around the ancient trees, obscuring visibility and amplifying every sound. It was the perfect stage for the unfolding conflict. Wren stood on the dominant ridge, her powerful dark wolf form blending seamlessly with the early light. Kale stood beside her, his gray fur bristling, his senses alert. Around them, the allied rogue packs, a collective of silent, determined warriors, waited. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a mixture of apprehension and grim resolve. There was no blah, joyful howling, no pre-battle rituals, just a quiet, focused readiness. Wren could feel the nervous energy, but beneath it, a deep current of shared purpose, a collective desire for freedom that transcended their individual fears. From the distant depths of the forest, the ground began to tremble. A low, guttural rumble, growing steadily louder, signaled the approach of the Blackwood army. The air filled with the pungent scent of dozens, then hundreds, of aggressive wolves, their musky odor a heavy cloud on the misty breeze. Roric's army was vast, a formidable force that stretched as far as the eye could see, their dark forms emerging from the mist like a living shadow. Wren felt a flicker of fear, a primal instinct to flee from such overwhelming numbers. But then, she thought of her fallen pack, of their broken bodies on the forest floor, of the indignity of her slavery. The fear solidified into a cold, unyielding resolve. This was for them. This was for her. Rooric emerged at the head of Tay. His army, his wolf form a colossal silhouette against the pale dawn. His golden eyes, blazing with fury and absolute confidence, immediately found Wren on the ridge. A guttural snarl of pure rage tore from his throat, a sound that vibrated through the very ground. He knew his mate was leading the charge against him. The insult was personal, a direct challenge to his dominion. Blackwood! Roric's howl reverberated through the forest, a command, a rallying cry. Crush them! Show them the true meaning of power. Bring me the awakened. She will learn her place. The Blackwood army surged forward, a dark tide of fur and fangs, their growls rising into a thunderous roar. They moved with disciplined precision, a testament to Roric's rigorous training. Hold! Cale's command rang out, clear and steady. Let them enter the pass. The rogue allies remained hidden, nestled among the rocks and trees, their forms blending with the mist-shrouded terrain. They waited, their hearts pounding, their muscles coiled. As the first wave of Blackwood warriors poured into the narrow pass below the ridge, the terrain began to work against them. The dense mist, combined with the uneven ground and hidden obstacles, fragmented their disciplined formation. Their sheer numbers became a hindrance, creating bottlenecks and confusion. Now, Wren's howl, powerful and clear, cut through the din of battle, a rallying cry to her allies. From the ridge, and from hidden positions within the dense forest, the rogue allies launched their surprise attack. Timberfang archers, their bows strung with hardened sinew, rained down a volley of razor-sharp arrows, tipped with a paralyzing herb they had learned to cultivate. Stoneclaw warriors, using their immense strength, dislodged boulders from the ridge, sending them crashing down into the pass, further disrupting the Blackwood ranks. Riverbend wolves, moving with silent agility, sprang from the mist-shrouded trees, targeting the Blackwood flanks, sowing chaos and disarray. Wren shifted to her powerful wolf form, a blur of dark fur, and leapt from the ridge, landing with a devastating impact in the heart of the Blackwood forces. Her size, her speed, and the raw, untamed power she radiated caught them by surprise. She moved like a phantom, her amber eyes blazing, tearing through their ranks, not aiming for kills, but for disruption, for demoralization. She snapped at their limbs, slammed into their sides, scattering their formations, turning their disciplined advance into a panicked scramble. Naya, fierce and agile, fought by her side, a loyal shadow. Cale, leading his own contingent, moved strategically, exploiting the confusion, pushing the Blackwood forces deeper into the choke points. Rooric, witnessing the chaos unfolding among his elite warriors, snarled in frustration. He had underestimated them, underestimated her. His golden eyes, filled with rage, sought out Wren, cutting through the chaos to find her dark form wreaking havoc. "Wren," Rooric howled, his voice a primal roar of challenge. "You will pay for this defiance." He surged forward, cutting a swathe through the battle, his focus solely on her. His power was immense, his speed terrifying. Wren met his charge head-on, a fierce snarl tearing from her throat. This was the moment she had waited for, the personal confrontation, the true test of her awakened power against the alpha who had stolen her freedom. Their forms collided with a force that shook the ground. Fangs met fangs, claws ripped at fur. Rooric was a formidable opponent, his years of combat experience and raw strength evident in every move. He fought with brutal efficiency, aiming to dominate, to subdue, to reassert his claim. But Wren fought with something more. The burning fury of vengeance, the desperate need for freedom, and the raw, untamed power of an awakened wolf. She was faster than he expected, her movements unpredictable, her blows landing with surprising force. Her agility, a remnant of her human cunning, allowed her to evade his brute charges, to slip through his defenses. She fought not with textbook precision, but with a wild, instinctive ferocity, a raw, primal energy that Roric seemed unable to anticipate. She snarled, ripping at his flank, then twisting, delivering a powerful blow with her massive paw to his chest. Roric roared in pain and frustration, stumbling back. He had expected a weaker, less skilled opponent. He had expected her to submit, to eventually yield to the mate bond. But Wren was not yielding. She was fighting to take everything from him. As they circled each other, a roar of pain erupted from the Blackwood ranks. Valerius, Roric's beta, lay wounded, a rogue Stoneclaw warrior having exploited the chaos to land a devastating blow. The sight of his injured beta, coupled with Wren's relentless assault, created a crack in Roric's unyielding control. His focus splintered, his arrogance giving way to a flicker of doubt. This was Wren's opportunity. With a renewed surge of power, she launched herself at Rooric, a terrifying blur of dark fur and flashing fangs. She aimed not for dominance, but for disruption, for the decisive blow that would shatter his reign. The final desperate phase of the war for the crown had begun, and Wren was determined to emerge victorious, no longer a slave, but a queen in her own right. The Alpha's fall. The clash between Wren and Rooric was a maelstrom of fur and fangs, a primal dance of power and defiance. Rooric, initially shocked by Wren's ferocity and skill, quickly recovered, his years of battle experience kicking in. He was a master of brute force, his charges devastating, his fangs aiming for crippling blows. But Wren, drawing on the raw, untamed power of her awakened wolf and her human cunning, met him blow for blow, matching his strength with agility, his dominance with unyielding defiance. The battle raged around them, a chaotic symphony of snarls, howls, and the thud of colliding bodies. The allied rogues, energized by Wren's display of power, fought with renewed ferocity, exploiting the fragmented Blackwood ranks. Naya was a whirlwind of gray fur, felling warriors with strategic precision. Kale, his voice a constant stream of commands, maneuvered his pack, keeping the Blackwood forces off balance. Wren focused solely on Rooric, her amber eyes locked onto his blazing gold. She recognized his desperation, his growing frustration. He expected her to falter, to eventually succumb to the primal mate bond he believed existed, but the bond was a flimsy thing when pitted against the raging fire of her vengeance, the bitter taste of past slavery. Rooric launched a powerful lunge, his massive jaws snapping towards her neck. Wren anticipated the move, twisting midair, a fluid, almost impossible maneuver, and landed a devastating kick to his ribs with her powerful hind leg. A grunt of pain tore from Roric's throat, and he stumbled, his breathing ragged. "You are stronger than I anticipated, little wolf," Roric snarled, regaining his footing, his golden eyes narrowed with a dangerous glint. "But you are still just an anomaly. You will fall, I am the anomaly that will break your reign, Wren retorted, her voice a low growl, her hackles rising. She feigned a retreat, drawing Rooric further into the narrow, misty pass, where his superior size and strength were hampered by the uneven terrain. He followed, driven by rage and the need to reassert his dominance. As he charged, Wren suddenly shifted direction, using a large fallen log as a spring. She launched herself over him, landing on his back with surprising force. Her fangs closed, not on his neck, but on the thick fur of his shoulder, ripping and tearing, causing him to howl in pain. Rooric roared, bucking violently, trying to dislodge her. He slammed himself against a tree, then tried to roll, but Wren clung on, a tenacious shadow, her claws digging into his hide. She heard the crunch of bone, a sickening sound, as she focused her power, aiming for a point that would disable, not kill, him. She wanted him to witness his defeat, to understand the depth of his downfall. Suddenly, a series of howls, sharp and piercing, erupted from the Blackwood ranks. It was Valerius, Roric's beta, his voice laced with a cold, calculated authority. The beta had observed the tide of the battle turning, Roric's struggle against Wren, and the growing disarray among their warriors. He saw his opportunity. "Blackwood!" Valerius howled, his voice amplified by his beta status, carrying over the sounds of battle. "The Alpha weakens. His arrogance has led us to ruin. He is no longer fit to lead." A ripple of shock, then confusion, swept through the Blackwood ranks. Many warriors hesitated, looking between their struggling Alpha and the opportunistic beta. Valerius, seizing the moment, shifted to his human form, drawing a large, gleaming hunting knife. He plunged it into the side of a Blackwood warrior loyal to Rooric, a brutal, public act of betrayal. The sight of their beta turning on his own, the clear signal of a power vacuum, shattered the remaining discipline of the Blackwood army. Confusion turned into panic, panic into a desperate flight. Warriors broke ranks, scattering into the forest, some fighting among themselves, others fleeing the relentless assault of the rogue allies. Rooric, distracted by the betrayal of his beta and the disintegration of his army, faltered. Wren, sensing his moment of weakness, released her bite on his shoulder and delivered a final, devastating blow with her paw to his injured side. Rooric collapsed, his massive wolf form hitting the ground with a sickening thud, a broken, defeated heap. He lay there, whimpering, his golden eyes filled with pain, confusion, and a dawning, terrible realization of his defeat. Wren stood over him, her dark fur bristling, her chest heaving. The battle had taken its toll, her muscles aching, but a fierce triumph coursed through her. She had done it. She had defeated him. She shifted back to her human form, standing naked and vulnerable, yet radiating an undeniable power. She looked down at Rooric, still in his wolf form, whimpering on the ground. His once arrogant golden eyes now held a flicker of fear, of something broken. Kale approached, followed by Naya and the other allied alphas, their faces grim but victorious. They surveyed the retreating Blackwood warriors, the scattered bodies of the fallen, and Rooric, defeated and broken. "The Blackwood Pack is shattered," Kale announced, his voice filled with a quiet authority. "Valerius has claimed leadership, but his treachery will ensure their continued disarray. Their reign is over." He then looked at Wren, his gaze filled with a profound respect. "You did it, Wren. You faced him, and you broke him. You have liberated us all." Wren knelt beside Roric's defeated form. She looked into his eyes, recalling the contempt, the forced claim of mate, the casual cruelty of her slavery. But now all she saw was a broken beast, a deposed king. The vengeance was sweet, sharper than any blade. "You called me mate," Wren whispered, her voice low and steady, laced with cas. "Triumph. You believed you could own my power, control my destiny. You thought I was here to rule beside you." She paused, letting her words sink into his shattered pride. "But I told you, Rooric, I was here to take the crown for myself." With a decisive move, Wren reached out, her hand, still trembling slightly from the battle, gently touched his forehead. She did not kill him. She did not offer mercy. She simply laid claim. A surge of raw, untamed power, channeled through her awakened spirit, flowed from her into him, severing the last tam. Vestiges of his alpha authority, his primal connection to his scattered pack. It was a symbolic gesture, a ritual of usurpation, witnessed by the silent, awestruck rogue alphas. His reign was truly, irrevocably over. She stood, turning to face Kale and the assembled rogue leaders. The sun, finally breaking through the mist, cast a golden glow over the clearing, illuminating her, the once human slave, now a triumphant warrior, radiating power and purpose. The fight was won. The crown, not of the Blackwood, but of a new era of leadership, was hers for the taking. The true work, however, was just beginning. The dawn of a new reign, the battlefield, once a scene of brutal carnage, began to settle into an eerie silence, broken only by the distant whimpers of the wounded and the retreating sounds of the broken Blackwood Pack. Wren stood amidst the aftermath, naked, unbowed, her powerful wolf scent mingling with the lingering scent of fear and triumph. Kale, Naya, and the other allied alphas approached, their expressions a mix of awe, relief, and profound respect. "It is done," Kale stated, his voice hushed as he looked at Roric's still, whimpering form. "His pack is scattered, his power broken." He then turned to Wren, his gaze direct and unwavering. "You have liberated us all, Wren. You have proved yourself more than worthy. You are an alpha, a leader unlike any we have ever known." The other allied alphas, their faces grim but resolute, nodded in agreement. There was no question, no challenge to Kale's pronouncement. Wren, the former human slave, had defeated the most powerful alpha in the territories, not just through brute force, but through cunning, strategy, and the raw, unbridled power of her awakened wolf. She had earned their respect, their loyalty, and their unspoken fealty. "We follow you, Wren," Naya declared, her voice strong and clear, stepping forward and bowing her head in a gesture of submission. The other Timberfang warriors followed suit, their powerful wolf forms bowing to their new leader. One by one, the alphas of the allied packs, their faces etched with the weariness of battle but alight with a newfound hope, followed Naya's lead, acknowledging Wren as their sovereign. A strange warmth spread through Wren's chest, a feeling far deeper and more profound than any physical triumph. It was the weight of responsibility, the surge of purpose, the quiet acceptance of a destiny she had never dared to dream of. She was not just a survivor. She was a queen, and her crown was forged not of gold, but of liberation, resilience, and the unwavering loyalty of those she had freed. She looked at the wounded and the fallen, her gaze softening. "Our work is not yet over," Wren commanded, her voice clear and strong, radiating a natural authority. "Tend to the wounded, both ours and theirs. We will offer aid to any Blackwood warrior who chooses peace over continued conflict. And we will send messengers to the scattered fragments of the Blackwood Pack to inform them that Roric's reign is over, and a new era of balance, not domination, has begun." Her first commands as queen were not of conquest or vengeance, but of healing and compassion. This was a stark contrast to Roric's ruthless regime, and it resonated deeply with the weary, battle-scarred warriors. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembled pack. Over the next few days, the focus shifted from battle to recovery and consolidation. Wren, with Kale and Naya as her trusted advisors, worked tirelessly to establish a new order. They sent out scouting parties to assess the full extent of Roric's scattered forces and to extend invitations of peace to any who wished to join their new alliance. Many Blackwood warriors, disillusioned by Valerius's betrayal and Roric's defeat and weary of constant warfare, chose to join Wren's growing coalition. Her compassionate leadership, so different from Roric's iron paw, began to draw wolves who craved peace and stability. Rooric himself was imprisoned, held in a secure, magically warded chamber, his power effectively severed by Wren's unique abilities. He was no longer a threat, merely a symbol of a deposed tyranny. His pleas for the mate bond, his desperate attempts to regain control, were met with Wren's cold resolve. He was a prisoner of his own ambition, left to contemplate the consequences of underestimating an awakened human. The new alliance began to establish a governing council, drawing representatives from each of the former rogue packs, ensuring that every crass voice was heard, every concern addressed. Wren, as their alpha queen, held ultimate authority, but she governed with wisdom, compassion, and a deep respect for the diverse perspectives of her people. She sought to build a pack, not just a ruling stall entity, one that valued community, freedom, and the well-being of all its members, human and shifter alike. Her human insight proved invaluable in these early days of governance. She brought a perspective that transcended the ingrained traditions and biases of shifter culture, offering innovative solutions to complex problems, fostering diplomacy and promoting understanding between different factions. She worked to establish clear laws, fair resource distribution, and effective conflict resolution mechanisms, building a society rooted in justice and mutual respect. News of the Blackwood Pack's defeat and the rise of the awakened queen spread like wildfire throughout the wider werewolf territories. Other packs, who had either secretly resented Roric's expansion or feared his growing power, watched with keen interest. Some sent envoys, curious about this new leader who had risen from slavery to claim a crown. Wren met them with open arms, offering peace, cooperation, and the promise of a more balanced, prosperous future for all. Her unique origin, the story of the human slave who shifted and became a queen, became a legend. It challenged ancient prejudices, forcing shifters to reconsider their assumptions about humans and about power itself. It was a story of defiance, resilience, and the unforeseen strength that lay within the most unexpected places. Wren often sought out Lyra, her former guard, now a respected elder in her new council. "You helped me, Lyra," Wren said one evening as they watched the stars from the lodge's porch. "You risked everything." Lyra smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "I saw a promise of something better, Wren. A true leader. Not one who took, but one who built. Not one who feared compassion, but one who understood its strength." Her gaze held a deep, quiet reverence. "You are more than an alpha queen, Wren. You are a symbol, a new beginning for all of us." Wren looked out at the peaceful camp, the sounds of laughter and friendly conversation replacing the grim silence of war. She thought of her fallen Crimson Moon Pack, and a pang of sorrow mixed with gratitude welled within her. They were gone, but their spirit, their belief in compassion and unity, lived on through her. Her journey had taken her from unimaginable depths to the pinnacle of power, from chains to a crown. But this crown was not a burden. It was a responsibility, a commitment to building a better world. She was the awakened queen, the one who had defied fate and claimed her own destiny. And as she looked towards the horizon, Wren knew, with a fierce certainty, that her reign, built on the foundations of justice, compassion, and unwavering strength, was just beginning.